Hello! Today we are making a new cell phone stand. Since February holidays are coming, St. Valentine's Day and then Men's Day, I believe such phone stands can be a nice gift. At first, let's weave a heart-shaped stand for St. Valentine's. First of all, you have to weave a cup. Let's try a new variety of an oval bottom. I will share the link to the author of this bottom at Strana.Mastero website. First of all, I'd like to share my experience and tell you about the challenges I faced. To help you avoid my mistakes, you have to know that you need an odd number of poles for a bottom of a heart-shaped stand, cause we need a tube in the center. I take 5 tubes. In this case, 1 tube will be right in the center. So, 5 tubes. I have lengthened the newspaper tubes, painted with mordant mixed with colorant, and start hugging each tube separately. The intervals between the poles have to be short. The item is going to be small, that's why you have to weave tight. So interweave the tubes. The vacant tubes are moistened, while the poles are dry. I've interwoven these couple of tubes. Take the next one. These tubes are moistened as well. The author of this bottom is Lucy, Lyudmila from St. Petersburg. I will share the link in the article. I'm just bored to make identical items every time, so I try my best to find new ideas. So I've woven 4 rows, now I'm going to lengthen more tubes. Since the item is going to be small, the workpiece is small as well. Then I start entwining the poles in our standard rope-like technique. Direct rope and opposite rope, in order to prevent the bottom from twisting. Here I hug 4 tubes from one side and 4 tubes from the other side. I try my best to press the rows tight to keep the shape smooth. Four. Here I apply dragon glue, cause there are a lot of sharp twists and bends in this article. That's why I need strong glue. I found a piece of advice recently that one can mix dragon glue with spirit. It makes my life much easier. Pure dragon glue gets dry too fast, which complicates the process. Now, when I've started mixing fast-drying glue with spirit, it is much more convenient. I've started the second row. Since I'm weaving direct and opposite rope, I'm passing to the opposite rope in the beginning of the row. In the second row, I'm separating the tubes into couples. In this point you have to be very careful, press tightly. Thanks to this type of a bottom, I don't have to add any additional poles in this small item. I'm still working with the same amount of poles I've started working from the very beginning. Continue this way. In the fourth row, I'm separating the side couples into individual tubes. In the fifth row, I'm going to separate the central double tubes. One row in the direct rope style, the following row in the opposite rope style. Now we have to decide upon the size. Everything depends on your base form. I'm using this bottle. I like its oval shape. I believe such a narrow edge will fit perfectly a stand like this. Since the stand is going to hold a cell phone, it has to be stable, so an edge will be quite appropriate. The only problem is that this one is too big. It is going to occupy too much space on your desk. So 6 rows is too much. I believe 3 or 4 rows will be quite sufficient. Here there are 2 rows beyond the base, so I'm going to weave a couple of rows more and that'll do. The intervals between the side poles will tend to this interval. I'm going to pull the side poles a bit apart. I've woven 4 rows, let's weave 3 rows more. About 7 rows around the very bottom. Well, actually it also depends on your tubes. Hide the tube ends toward the wrong side. Let's have a look. I've got 4 rows of the very bottom and 7 rows around it. In order to avoid excessive tightness, I'm going to indent 3 rows away and lead the poles up. Look, here I've tried just bending the poles up, but I don't actually like the result. It is too clumsy. Here I've applied a technique we often use while lifting the poles. I mean, I have to bend the poles toward inside. All of you are familiar with this technique. Pull the poles a bit tighter, just like we raise the poles while weaving boxes. In this case, you lead the poles down in the same very way, in order to trim the edge. Now turn the item. As I've already mentioned, across 3 rows, here I have to lead the poles through. You'd better pull the poles a little tighter to prevent them from breaking. At the same time, you smoothen and straighten them. Of course you can cut and insert the poles, but why do you have to if you can continue weaving on the same very poles? The pulled tubes are not going to play any decorative role here. It is just a trick to avoid tube cutting. Since our item is flexible, here I've tried making a kind of a pedestal by bending the edge a bit downward. I like it this way even more. I mean, this volumetric part is not going to interfere. You can trim and mask it later. As for these side turns, you can insert several tubes into one gap. Soften the tubes a little. Let's try it in the next gap. For you to understand what I'm talking about, it is where I insert the tubes at a turn. A few rows after we're going to cut one of the poles. Try your best to keep the intervals between the poles of the cup identical. Even if they are not, we will adjust them later in the process of weaving. And continue this way. Lift all the poles, lead them from the wrong side to the front side. The poles are lifted. Let's try the base form on. That's all, and weave 5 rows. Weave direct opposite rope-like. Otherwise, different parts of the item will be woven in different patterns. In order to keep the whole item identical patterned, let's weave it in the direct and opposite rope style. Since the first forthcoming holiday is St. Valentine's Day, the first phone stand is going to be heart-shaped. Please notice that the shape of the heart is more clearly seen here, so it is the very shape we are going to weave. At first I wove a stand like this, but I dislike this shape. That's why let's make these raises a bit higher. What do we do for it? First of all, let's mark the central poles from the front and back sides of the item. Now reach the center and turn. And weave in the opposite direction up to this turn. In order to shape the stand like a heart, and at the same time to avoid any inconveniences, I apply the following technique. Look, here we've got 2 rows of tubes at a turn, 1 tube and the second tube. If I weave 4 rows, it will be too much, and the slant will be too sharp. Too inconvenient for entwining and not very nice looking. 2 rows are insufficient. The slant will not be sharp enough. Let's try to weave 3 rows. How do we do it? Now I turn this tube here and weave it. This way I've got 3 rows in the lifting point, while the second tube is hidden here. Let me show you once again. Now I make the turn from this side. I lead a working tube behind the extreme pole, pull it here as tight as possible, and I've got 3 levels this way. The next turn will be here, at first complete and then partial, the third level. I like the way the heart looks with a trimmed edge. It makes the stand look completed. That's why I don't save tubes, but on the contrary, I lengthen additional tubes where my remaining poles are too short. These tubes are long enough for a simple edge. I don't see any point in making the edge too volumetric on such a small item. The main task is to complete it in a neat and nice-looking way. In the high part of the heart, the tubes are not long enough. The red tubes were a bit longer, that's why I didn't have to lengthen them. Now I'm weaving with short newspaper tubes, therefore I'm lengthening the tubes. I've already shown you the trick. I lengthen the tubes at different levels in order to fix them stronger, to prevent the item from falling apart along the weakest line. The tubes to lengthen are dry. So I've woven 3 stairs. I've turned for the 4th time. Now it is high time to form the back side of the heart. Here is the central part. Let's recollect where the central tube is. Reach the central tube and make a turn just before it. Here, after 3 big 1.5 row stairs, I'm making the following stairs single-rowed. I'm smoothing the heart lines. Let's have a look. The 4th stair is big as well. Here let's make a single row stair. I made 1 turn already, let's make the second one. You'd better apply glue to the turns. While weaving the central part, I didn't use glue. Here where I make turns, I do. One, 2, 3, 4. Make 1 more turn. This is the last turn. After which the tubes are going to entwine the heart further. Let's leave this part so far and shift to the mirror section in order to make it symmetric. Continue from the following stair. Reach the central tube and make a turn just before it, in the same very way as we've done in this part. Turn very carefully in order to keep the heart's center neat. You can assist yourself with your finger. Weave a row or two in the technique of a standard rope. In this case, I'd like to emphasize the edge with color. I'm not going to weave with another color. These tubes are made of newspaper. I'd like to patinate the item afterwards. In this case, I've used the so-called lazy edge by Natalia Sorokina. I've woven one row in the technique of a standard rope, then a row in the technique of 3-tube rope, and finally I've bent the tubes behind the following row. I like the way it is. My only failure is that I've lengthened the tubes here, and unfortunately the result looks untidy. Now I know that you have to lengthen the tubes in such a way to make the joint invisible from the front side. Please keep it in mind while weaving. Anyway, I'm going to trim the edge in a different way, cause I'd like to outline it with color. So far I'm twining the edge with a 2-tube rope. You have to be especially careful at the turns. In order to keep the pattern smooth. I don't trim the edge in any complicated way, because the tubes are too short and I don't want to lengthen them. That's why I'm using the simplest edge trimming technique. One step of rope and bend the tube. The next step, bend the tube again. You have to moisten the dry tubes beforehand. Rope-like step, bend. The next step, bend. Let's lengthen the tube and continue. It looks rather simple, but anyway the edge is emphasized. It is the preliminary result. Now I'm going to finish it.